Hello everyone. I welcome you all to this video in which I would be talking to you about Article 13 of the Constitution of India. Now, what does Article 13 basically do? Article 13 tells us what would be the status of those laws which are inconsistent with fundamental rights prescribed in Part 3. So, if you look at the way Article 13 is structured, you will realize that in Clause 1, Article 13 talks about the status of pre-constitutional laws which are inconsistent with fundamental rights, and in Clause 2 of the article, it talks about the status of post-constitutional laws that violate or abrogate fundamental rights. So, I think Article 13 occupies a very, very important place in the entire scheme of Part 3 of the Constitution, because eventually in the course of this video, I will talk to you about what does Article 13 prescribe and say about these kind of laws. But, if we look at Article 13, it tries to tell us that any such laws, whether pre or post-constitutional, if they go against the mandate of fundamental rights in Part 3, then such laws will go away as void. This is the basic position that Article 13 gives to all of us. So it's in effect trying to tell us no such laws would be allowed to remain operative within the country which are opposing the mandate of fundamental rights. And that's why, to begin with, let's understand the point that Article 13 brings home to us the importance of fundamental rights. It tries to tell us what is that position of importance that the founders wanted to give to the basic and inalienable fundamental rights of the people. Now, if we go to look at the text of Article 13 and what does it really prescribe in the context of such laws. Now, just let's look at the marginal title of Article 13. The marginal title says, laws inconsistent with or in derogation of fundamental rights. So the marginal title itself is trying to tell us that this is an article that is dealing with laws which are either inconsistent with fundamental rights, number one, or laws which derogate fundamental rights. Derogate means which is abrogating fundamental rights, which is trying to reduce the effect of fundamental rights. What would happen to these kind of laws is the subject matter of discussion in Article 13. Now, let us look at what Clause 1 of 13 prescribes. It says, all laws in force in the territory of India immediately before the commencement of this Constitution, insofar as they are inconsistent with the provisions of this part, shall, to the extent of inconsistency, be void. Now, that's what Article 13, Clause 1 prescribes to us. So, if you look at the way Clause 1 opens, it says all laws in force in the territory of India when immediately before the commencement of this Constitution. So, in Clause 1, Article 13 focuses upon pre-constitutional legislations. That means those laws which were passed in this country prior to 26th of January 1950 and which continued to remain in force even post 26 January 1950. So, there were a lot of laws that were passed by the British Parliament for us back then when they ruled us. But some of these laws we expressly repealed at the commencement of the Constitution, but those which were not repealed, continued to remain in operation even post 1950. Now 13 clause 1 is trying to answer the simple question to us that if such a pre-constitutional law becomes inconsistent with a fundamental right after the commencement of the Constitution, what happens to such a law? And 13 clause 1 answers that question to us by telling us that such a law shall go away as void. Now let's try and understand that why do we need this kind of a prescription that deals specifically with pre-constitutional laws. We're talking about pre-constitutional laws here because let's understand the point that when the pre-constitutional laws were enacted prior to 26th of January 1950, at that time, the conceptual filter of fundamental rights was not available to the ones who enacted those laws. So, you made those laws when fundamental rights were not there at all. And then after the commencement of the Constitution, when fundamental rights came to be enumerated within the Constitution, what would happen if such laws contravene these fundamental rights? Therefore, Article 13, Clause 1 answers this question to us, and it says that all pre-constitutional laws which are inconsistent with fundamental rights, they shall, to the extent of inconsistency, be void. Now, 13 is giving you the result. It's giving you a position, the conclusion of what will happen if a pre-constitutional law contravenes a fundamental right. It definitely tells you that such a law will go away as void. But how will it go away as void? There's a specific stipulation within the text of 13.1, and it says that such a law will go away as void, yes, but it would go away as void only to the extent of inconsistency. So what this is trying to tell you is that, look, any pre-constitutional law that is inconsistent with a fundamental right would not, the whole of the law would not be thrown away to the dustbin, but to the extent of inconsistency, the law would be void. Means that much part of the law which is inconsistent with fundamental right, that much part would go away as void, but the remainder of the statute can still continue to remain valid and operative. Now, that's what 13 Clause 1 tells us about a pre-constitutional law that is inconsistent with a fundamental right. And when we say inconsistent with the right, it means that it's opposed to a fundamental right, that both the law as well as the fundamental right cannot together remain in operation. So one of them has to go away, and therefore 13.1 tells us that it is the law which will go away as void, but it will be void only to the extent of inconsistency. Now that's what we get to learn from the statement of Article 13 Clause 1. Now if we look at 13.2, let us look at the wordings of 13.2. 13.2 says, the state shall not make any law that takes away or abridges the rights conferred by this part, and any law made in contravention of this clause shall, to the extent of contravention, be void. Now, if we take a comparative look at what is 13.1 doing and what is 13.2 trying to tell us. Remember 13.2, which came into force on the 26th of January 1950. On the 26th of January, this clause told us that, look, the state shall not make any law that takes away or abridges the rights conferred by this part. That means somewhere 13 Clause 2 is a direct mandate to the state, telling the state that, look, whenever you exercise your lawmaking powers, you shall not make any such law that takes away or abridges the rights that are conferred by this part. That means when we are talking under 13.2, We are basically talking about a post-constitutional law. And in the post-constitutional period, the constitution is telling the state that, look, you are not entitled to enact any such law within this country that goes against the mandate of fundamental rights in Part 3. And should you enact such a law, what would happen to the law? The law will go away as void. That means if you look at clause 1 and clause 2 together, the moral of the whole story is that any law, whether pre or post-constitutional, if it opposes the mandate of fundamental rights, if it is inconsistent with Part 3 or it derogates Part 3, then such a law will go away as void. And again in clause 2, the clause says, any law made in contravention of this clause shall be void, but how? To the extent of the inconsistency. So that much part of the law which is inconsistent with fundamental rights will go away as void. Now that's what Article 13 is trying to tell us. Now, after having looked into what clause 1 and clause 2 of Article 13 prescribe, what can we make out as the important key points about Article 13 that we need to bear in mind? Number one, let's try and understand that Article 13 operates as a source of the court's power of judicial review. Because both of them, clause 1 and clause 2, are trying to tell us that, look, any such law that's going against fundamental rights shall be void. Now, how will a law go away as void? It's not an automatic process that, look, if there is inconsistency, the law automatically goes away as void. The fact that you're saying the law goes away as void, it means you're investing in the judicial institution a power to declare such a law as void. And in that sense, therefore, 13 operates as an important source of the court's power of judicial review. It is recognizing this power of the courts to declare these kind of laws as void. Secondly, while Article 13 recognizes the judicial review power of the court, on the other hand, Article 13 also operates as a limitation on the power of the state, more particularly on the power of the legislature, because clause 2 of Article 13 tells us in so many words, tells us so clearly that, look, the state shall not make any law that opposes fundamental rights. So there it's imposing a limitation. It's imposing a restriction on the power of the state to enact laws within this country. And what is the restriction? That, you're telling the legislature that, look, the plenary power of lawmaking is definitely your power. You have the sovereign power of lawmaking, but that would be subject to the limitation that the state cannot enact laws that oppose the mandate of fundamental rights. So thereby, what is the important function that Article 13 discharges? Remember, Article 13 of the Constitution is trying to entrench fundamental rights. How does it entrench fundamental rights? Because it's telling you that, look, even through a unanimous vote in Parliament, the Parliament cannot really be passing a law that takes away fundamental rights of people. So you're entrenching fundamental rights so that no statute can ever be allowed to violate the prescriptions of fundamental rights in Part 3. You are thereby placing Part 3 of the Constitution beyond the vicissitudes of political majorities. No temporary majority in the Parliament can be allowed to play with your fundamental rights through their sovereign powers of lawmaking. That's the important point that Article 13 tells us. So 13 gives a special place to fundamental rights within our constitutional scheme. It tells us what is that position of importance that Part 3 of fundamental rights occupy within our constitutional design? It tells us that nobody can rob these rights of ours, because if these kind of laws are made, what is the destiny of these laws? That is what 13 prescribes to us, and it tells us that such a law shall go away as void. Number 3, Article 13 is a recognition of the court's power of judicial review to void these kind of laws that oppose fundamental rights. And fourthly, Article 13 of the Constitution entrenches fundamental rights because it places these rights beyond the power of the members of the parliament to abrogate these rights or to take away these rights even through a unanimous vote in parliament. So what Article 13 actually does is it prevents fundamental rights from becoming a plaything in the hands of the majority. So no one can touch these rights of ours, and that's the reason why, when we look at Part 3, the opening article is Article 12, which defines state, so it doesn't give us any right. Article 13, which is the very next article, also doesn't give us a concrete fundamental right. Yet nonetheless, Article 13 becomes very, very significant because it is attempting to place these fundamental rights on that higher pedestal, thereby telling the temporary power holders of the day that, look, these rights are not going to be playthings into your hands. And in that sense, 13 entrenches these basic and inherent rights of ours. Now, in this background, we will take a quick look at Article 13(3)(a) of the Constitution, because what 13(3)(a) does is it endeavors to define the word law. Now, why basically do we need to define the word law? The reason why we need this definition to be concretely placed within the text of Article 13 itself is that in 13(2), you're trying to tell the state that, look, state shall not make what? State shall not make any law that infringes fundamental rights or that abrogates fundamental rights. And then if the state at all ends up making this kind of a law, then 13(2) is telling you the law will be void. So everywhere the word that we have used there is, we are saying state shall not make any law. So what is it that you can declare void under Article 13? You can declare only that thing void which comes within the bracket of the word law that is used in the text of 13(2). And that's the reason why, by way of abundant caution, by way of bringing in clarity on the issue, 13(3)(a) dedicates some space towards defining the idea of law as used in Article 13. Now, if you look at the kind of definition that is given in 13(3)(a), it says, in this article, unless the context otherwise requires, law includes. So you again have an inclusive definition of the word law here, like we had an inclusive definition of state under Article 12. So it says, in this article, law includes. Now, what all does it include? It includes ordinance, order, bylaw, rules, regulations, notifications, customs and usages having in the territory of India the force of law. Now, that's how 13(3)(a) defines the word law. Now, look at what happens in this definition. Firstly, we said it's an inclusive definition, which again means that you're leaving a lot of scope there. You're giving a lot of flexibility there for expansions as well as contractions wherever you need them. Okay, so you're not saying law means, you're saying law includes. Now, what does law include? Law includes ordinance, order, bylaws, rules, regulations, notifications. Now, what are all these words that we have used here? Now, here I would want to draw your attention to the fact that if you go to look at it today, a large part of the law that governs you and me today is not really always that law which the legislature has laid down for us. We are in a large measure governed by laws that are made by agencies outside the legislature. So let's look at ordinance, for example. What is an ordinance? Ordinance is a law that is made by the executive. It is a law that is promulgated by either the president or the governor whenever the legislature is not in session and we are in need of a law. So that's not really law that comes from the sovereign lawmaking body. It's a law that's made by the executive. And 13(3)(a) is telling us the word law includes ordinance. That means whatever limitation applies to the lawmaking power of the legislature under 13(2), it equally applies to all agencies outside the legislature who make some kind of rules, some kind of regulations, some kind of notifications for us which operate upon us as the law. So, all these terms that you come across in the text of 13(3)(a), which is orders, bylaws, rules, regulations, notifications, they are all given the name of delegated legislation. So this is not legislation that comes from the sovereign or supreme lawmaking body like the parliament or the state legislatures. But what these supreme legislative bodies do is, for reasons of convenience of running the day-to-day administration, they would delegate, they would hand down their own power of lawmaking to bodies outside the legislature. So, in a lot of statutes made by the parliament, you would come across provisions of this kind where the parliament says the central government may make rules from time to time to give effect to the provisions of this law. So what the legislature has done here is, it's laid down the basic law in the statute, but the job of filling the inner details for making that law operational within the country, the power to make those rules is handed down to the central government, that means to the executive. So, if you look at, for example, the Consumer Protection Act, the Consumer Protection Act is allied with the Consumer Protection Rules. Now, these are rules that are made not by the parliament, but by the executive branch. And nonetheless, they operate upon you and me as the law itself. So 13(3)(a) makes that clarification to you and tells you that when Article 13 is telling the state that, look, you shall not make any law, the word law doesn't restrict itself to only that hard law made by the legislature. It is not restricted only to the statute law that comes from the parliament or the state legislatures, but it also applies, that limitation also applies to soft law that comes from bodies outside the legislature. So when the government of the day makes rules, it makes regulations, it makes notifications, it issues circulars. Now, during this pandemic period, we've seen the government coming up with newer notifications probably every week. They bind us as the law. Now what 13(3)(a) tells us is, they are a part of the word law for purposes of Article 13. And then 13 tells you, no such law can be made that violates your fundamental rights. So therefore, in totality, what Article 13(3)(a) is doing is, it is placing all these forms of delegated legislation or subordinate legislation, by whatever name you choose to call that, you're making that subject to the limitation of 13 clause 2. It also talks of customs and usages having the force of law in the territory of India. They are also a part of the word law. The only thing probably which is not included within the scope of the word law is law made by the judiciary, which becomes law by virtue of the operation of the doctrine of precedent, and by virtue of the Narsuappa Mali case, personal law is not law within the meaning of Article 13. So personal law is the religion-based law that applies to all of us in personal matters like marriage, divorce, succession, inheritance, and stuff like that. So Narsuappa Mali's case laid down the position that personal law is not law within the meaning of Article 13. But minus these two that I spoke to you about, all these other forms of law are very much looked at as included within the meaning of the word law as used in Article 13. And therefore, in totality, Article 13 is a very, very important article in the text of Part 3 because it discharges these important functions, entrenches fundamental rights, tells you that no law would be tolerated within this regime which violates or goes inconsistent with fundamental rights. It operates as a source of the court's power of judicial review, imposes a limitation on the lawmaking agencies within the country and tells them that no law can be made within this country that infringes fundamental rights. And therefore, number 5, it places fundamental rights beyond the vicissitudes of political power. So no majority in parliament can actually pass a law that takes away our basic fundamental rights. I hope this basic discussion about the text of Article 13 comes down clear to you after watching this video. Should you have any queries, any comments to make, please write it down in the comments section. I would look forward to reading all of them and replying if possible. Thank you very much for watching this video.